Hi everybody, I'm Sue Ellen Clayton. Welcome to my channel where we're learning how to read tarot one card at a time. Today's video is an update on what I've been doing for the last few weeks. If you follow my channel, you know that I've been taking a sabbatical, and I'll link to the video that talked about why I'm doing it below. So I'm going to talk about what I've been up to and then what I have learned, been doing differently regarding tarot. And then at the end, I will give you a reading. And if you're not interested in what's been going on in my life, I am not offended. And there are timestamps below, so you can just skip ahead to the parts that you're interested. So let's get started. What have I been up to? Well, the first thing is that my dad is finally in long-term care. My dad has very severe dementia, and if you rate dementia between 1 and 7, with 7 being the worst, he's a level 7. And my mom and dad are both 90, and my mom has been his sole caregiver up to this point. So this is his third week in long-term care. And he'd been on the list for quite a while, so this wasn't a new thing. It was just how much things have deteriorated over the last little while. And it got to the point where EMTs were there multiple times a week. He was just confused. My mom her health was declining because she was up with him during the night and he was having all these falls and all these events. So it's a really good thing that he got into long-term care. We're very grateful. The facility he's in seems to be wonderful. They seem to really like him and be willing to do some problem solving. And so that's really been a great thing. But it's a really hard thing to have a parent with dementia. And I don't say this to be insensitive to anyone who has had a loved one pass away, but I feel like that would almost be easier, right? Because in my mom's case, her spouse of like 68 years is no longer living with her, and as she said, the man that she fell in love with has been gone for a very long time. But she still has to visit him. She still has to pay for his vitamins. She has responsibilities. And I think that is very difficult. It's very difficult to see a loved one in decline. So Dad is adjusting. He still doesn't really understand why he's there and why he can't come home, and that's really awful. But he's getting more socialization than he did at home because it was basically just Mom and the assistants that came in to shower him and such. So, she came in the other day and he had a painting on his windowsill that he'd made at Arts and Crafts. So that's really as good as I think it's going to get. Mom is flourishing. That is great. It's such a relief. I had somebody tell me she's going to feel guilty. She's going to go through all this stuff. And I'm like, no, she's not. And she really has not. She's gotten a lot of the sick room stuff out of the house and kind of reclaimed the space. She got a cat after the first week. I was able to find a cat for her. So she's adopted a 4-year-old Siamese cat, which she's always loved. She's had a neighbor in to visit, and that's the first time she's had anyone but family and medical personnel in since probably before COVID. So all that's really good, positive news. In terms of me, even though they're in Canada, I'm in the United States, and I wasn't involved in the move from a physical standpoint. I was really involved from an emotional standpoint. So good news, but that took up a lot of time and emotional energy. The next thing I've been doing is lots of cleaning. And not that the house didn't need it, but a couple of things happened. So the first was that we ended up with mice in our basement. And my daughter and I both sew and have a lot of fabric and quilt projects, in my case, in the basement. So we found the mouse probably in September, and it we had set a trap, and it had killed it. So we were really quite happy and thought the problem had gone away. And then I had cleaned up a little area of dresser space in my quilting area so that my husband could carry down a really heavy box and put it there. Well, in the 2 days between when I cleaned off the area and when my husband came down with this heavy box, there was mouse poop all over my fabric. So we knew we had another mice or more mice. And then my daughter found a baby mouse. So we think that, we had a mama mouse. And anyway, I have probably hundreds of yards of quilt fabric that has had to be gone through, folded, put into bins. And that has been, I don't know how many hours. I mean, I'll go down for like 5 hours, and I've been down there for weeks. So that has been a really big project. We still haven't caught the offending mice, whether they've died or moved on, I don't know. But it's like every time you open something, you can think, oh no, is this, am I going to find a mouse? Am I going to find a dead mouse? Am I going to find mouse poop? So that has taken a bunch of time. So that's the basement. And then on the main floor of our house, I have a combination office sewing room. And while we were sorting through things for the mouse, I found a storage unit that we were not using. So I came up with this brilliant idea that I'd have my husband set up the storage unit the storage shelving in my office, and then I could put bins there. It would kind of organize some of the stuff I had, and it was just a brilliant idea. So I cleaned out the entire area where the shelving was going to go and, moved it all around. And he put together the shelf unit and realized it was missing a shelf. And he had used it in the shelf unit in our pantry, in our sort of kitchen area. So I really didn't want a 3-foot area without shelving. So he pulled the shelf out of the area in our pantry. He put it in my shelf unit, and that went into my office. And then I ordered, this is just like FYI, I had some 30-quart or 32-quart Sterilite bins, and they were 12.5 inches wide. 3 of them fit on a shelving unit. So I ordered 10 from Target so they would all match. Well, apparently Sterilite has all these different 32-quart units. And so it didn't fit. It was too wide, only 2 fit. So anyway, just an aside. But it meant that we now had to put the stuff that was on a shelf in the pantry unit somewhere else. We have additional shelving in our laundry room, which was stuffed full. So that meant going through the stuff that was in the laundry room, and a lot of our food had expired or whatever. So, and then one of the things that in my office, there was a desk unit. Well, that got moved into my social media area, which meant my microphone and everything had to be taken off. And then we had to move everything into the corner so we could move stuff around. So this was like a 2-week project, right? It was just nuts. So anyway, that was kind of the cleaning that has involved both the basement and touched, I guess, every single room in our downstairs. Another fun thing I did was that we have to change medical insurance. And those of you who live in places where there's socialized medicine have no idea how complex this is. Depending on whether you go with Blue Cross Blue Shield or Aetna or one of the many, many other plans, each have different doctors, each have different copays, each have different sets of benefits. It is a whole thing. And so anyway, trying to make that decision took me quite a while. And then the other thing on the medical front was I've been going through a lot of oral surgery, and I had another session with the oral surgeon, and then seeing my regular dentist. So that adventure is done for now, but that also took up a bit of time. Oh, and then I wanted to share some of the fun stuff I did too. It wasn't all terrible. I took a couple day trip by myself to Amish country in Pennsylvania. And I did my two favorite things, going to quilt shops and also going to plant nurseries. So that was really, really fun and nice to get away. It has probably been 3 or 4 years since I did that. So that was great. And also over the weekend, my daughter and I took a ferry ride across Long Island Sound to Connecticut. And we did the same thing. She's very into orchids these days. And we went to an orchid kind of farm, like basically the way they grow orchids, they're all in greenhouses. So I guess orchid greenhouses. I went to one of my favorite quilt shops and we did a couple of other things. So that was very fun. So yeah, when I talk about everything that's gone on, there's a lot. And when I tell you why I didn't get a lot of the tarot courses and classes done that I wanted to, that is the reason. So now let me talk about the tarot things that I've done and decided and been learning. First of all, I continue to do daily readings for myself first thing in the morning. I have done very few readings for other people. I'm also working hard on reading intuitively. So I have not been using spreads. I have not been using reversals. And I'm just trying to read the cards as they come across and see what my feelings are and how I interpret things. I definitely went through a feeling of frustration. So my old way of reading cards was using spreads, reversals, and traditional card meanings. And then I switched to reading intuitively, not using spreads, and not using reversals. And it was kind of going okay for a while. And then all of a sudden, I just hit this block where it was not going well at all. It was so frustrating. And I just kind of look at my reading and think, what the hell is this? Like, I don't know. I don't know anything. And I think it's kind of like if you teach yourself how to play tennis and then you take tennis lessons and your pro says, you don't do it that way, you do it this way. And then all of a sudden you can't hit the ball at all. And you're frustrated. And when you used to love playing tennis, now you just hate it. But eventually, when you stick with the pro, you get better because you're doing things the right way. So I don't know if that's a great analogy, but that's kind of what I felt like. I was just so frustrated. And that lasted maybe about 3 weeks. And I kept going. And yeah, I went through it. And now I'm kind of out the other side, at least for now. And I'm doing better with the intuitive readings. So, first of all, I really miss doing reversals. I think reversals add a lot to a reading, and I'm going to share a reading at the end where I really wish that I had had both a positional spread and reversals. So I know very soon I'm going to go back to doing spreads, I think, because I just feel like I get more out of the reading that way. Reversals, probably not for now, just because when I'm doing intuitive readings, it's really hard when it's upside down. I've also changed the way that I've done my tarot journaling. So in the past, I tried to keep it really clean, and it was just a question, and then the cards that I pulled, and then my analysis. And especially now that I'm not reading for others very much, it's become much more of a journal. So if a situation happens, I'll journal about it, and I may have an entire page, kind of like a brain dump or a rant or whatever. And then I'll pull the question out of that. And that's working really well. I don't think I want people to go through my journal, not that they would before. It's less clean is the best way I can describe it. But it's also a really good practice in coming out with, well, what's the question in this entire emotional mess? Like, what am I really asking here? So that has been a change, and I think that is something that I'm going to stick with in doing readings for myself. Something else that I tried for a while and worked really, really well was writing in the second person. So pulling up a reading and rather than saying, I see the Queen of Cups and this means blah, 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 I would say, you've got the Queen of Cups. This is telling you that you are dealing with something in an emotionally mature manner and blah, blah, blah. So that was really, really helpful. I feel like if you're stuck in a reading, it is hard to read for yourself because you just don't have a lot of objectivity. And I think that if you get stuck, that is one way to approach it, and something that I think is a great tool to keep in your toolbox. And I will certainly do in the future. Something else I've done, not a lot, but occasionally, is try to look at a reading from both sides. So this is just a really minor example, but just for theoretical purposes. But say I'm asking, should I get a cat? And I pull up three cards and I look at it and I really want a cat, right? And I look at it and it's like, oh yeah, this definitely shows I want a cat. But if it's a reading that I'm maybe a little bit torn with, or I'm not sure I have it right, or I want some more clarification, I'll go back and look at the same cards and ask, how do these cards show that I don't want to get a cat or I shouldn't get a cat? And then I'll read it that way. And that's been really interesting, and it's added a lot of depth to it. And I think that's a really good exercise that I would recommend that you try. I'm also finding that my readings take a lot less time because I'm doing them intuitively. In the past, I was going through and I was looking at the meanings of all three cards, and now it's just much more, okay, yeah, I can see this. And when I don't struggle, it can be only a couple of minutes. When I do struggle, it can take longer, but it has been just a much quicker experience in the morning because it used to take me 45 minutes and now it's taking me like 5. So that's been a really good thing. I've also found not making videos to be quite freeing. I don't know if you've seen the show Alone Australia. My family and I enjoy it. We watch it every week. It's on the History Channel, and I'll link to it below. So the story is there's 10 participants, and in this case, they're in a remote island on New Zealand, and they're all dropped off at remote locations with camera equipment and 10 things they're allowed to bring with them. And they have to make a shelter and find food, and the last person to survive wins. And they tap out for all sorts of reasons, right? They just can't handle it, they can't find food, whatever. So, what was interesting last night was there was a lady who tapped out because she was so frustrated making videos. And she said that she just couldn't enjoy the experience or her intuition because she was always trying to figure out how to film things. And that's a little bit how I felt this last few weeks, is a freedom to just, oh, okay, this is very personal. I'm not going to film it. Or this is really a crappy interpretation. I'm not going to film it. And so even today, I went back through 6 weeks of videos, and a lot of it is personal stuff. A lot of it's the same stuff over and over again. I chose one to share with you, but I've really appreciated not being bogged down by making videos. That's not to say I don't enjoy making videos, because I really do. And I really, really miss the structure. And I miss the fact that it forces me to learn things and to grow. But when I saw this lady talking about it on Alone, it was like, yeah, I can relate to that. All right, so I'm going to talk now about the reading that I did. And this was based on a argument between someone that I know, and it involved this person and a third person. And it was a situation that I was involved with, and I kind of simmered over time. I don't lose my cool very often, but it happens every couple of years, and it was just a constant buildup of something that was going on. And I really, really lost my temper at this person. So the other person in the triangle took it upon themselves to send me this long email about all the things that I had done wrong. And one of the things that they said in their email was that I'm always saying how empathic I am, but I showed no empathy to the person in this situation. And a lot of the email was accurate. I actually could have handled it better. I got to a boiling point. I could have waited and rather than blowing up, discussed it when I was less angry and all those things, right? But I'm human. But there was a lot of validity in what this person said. But the fact that they said, I'm always talking about how empathic I am, was just not true. And so we had discussed this email afterwards, and I had said, like, you think I'm always talking about how empathic I am? When do I talk about it? Because that is something I deliberately never, ever talk about, because the people in this group are not into any of this. They're very black and white. And so they said, oh, it was like 7 years ago. And I was going through this, and you told me that you were an empath, and this was your take on the situation, and it made me mad. So I was thinking, okay, so this was 7 years ago to tell me that I'm always talking about the fact I'm an empath. And when I was talking about it was when I was learning about this whole thing. Like, it was just not something I was brought up with. It was not something I knew about. I had read this book called The Highly Sensitive Person and thought, oh, wow, like there's a name for this. So once I don't know, settled into the truth of it, I guess, I didn't talk about it because I knew that it was just not something that was really going to be well received. So that was the gist of the issue, and I had done a lot of writing and tarot reading and journaling and such about this argument. So the question in all these pages of writing was, why was I so upset about being told I was claiming to be empathic when I knew, and this person agreed, I hadn't talked about it for 7 years. And I felt like I was being falsely accused of being a liar. So I did a reading, and these are the cards that I drew. The Three of Cups, the Three of Wands, the Ace of Cups, and then the bottom underlying energy of the reading was the Three of Pentacles. So the first thing I noticed was there were a lot of threes. And threes in the aces through tens come between like the new energy promise of the aces and the difficulty, conflict, disappointment of the fives. So they're kind of they're a number of change. And so I thought it was really interesting that I had these three out of the 4 cards that I picked were the threes. So the Three of Cups, I really wanted to be reading reversals because I did not feel like this was a happy situation. I did feel like it was a triangle, and I felt like it was a 2 against 1 triangle. I did feel like it was a situation where I had kept my mouth shut due to empathy for the other people involved, to try and keep the group very happy. But that was to the detriment of myself. So I felt like that should have been a reversed card, right? That it was not a happy situation. It was an unhappy situation for me. And it was not three people in the group dancing around. It was someone being upset and ostracized, which was me. So yeah, keeping the peace was my goal and keeping a happy group, and that just did not work out. So that was the Three of Cups. Next, we moved to the Three of Wands. And I felt like this was the waiting for my ship to come in card, right? I feel like I've done all this holding my feelings back and being empathic and not wanting to create drama, and then it happens anyway and I get blamed. And I'm just sort of standing there going, wait, why didn't it happen differently? Why couldn't I have gotten benefit from everything I thought I did? Why am I getting blamed for a situation I don't feel like I deserve to be blamed for? But the other meaning of that card could also be pondering the future and what do I want to do differently? And I'm waiting for, I'm thinking about what the future would look like for me. I'm planning my actions. So it could be a very positive card as well, and that's definitely not one that I would want to be reversed. And then the Ace of Cups looks to me like a card of sadness and tears and kind of overflowing with tears and, yeah, sadness. But it can also be a new beginning and a new emotional beginning. And how do I want to approach things emotionally in the future? Do I want to contain my feelings and my so-called empathy, or do I want to let it spill out? Is there a way I can discharge it without feeling like I have to hold things in? So I saw that as a really positive card as well. And finally, there was the Three of Pentacles. And I feel like I would have liked to see this card reversed too. So I see myself as being the person on the pedestal and really wanting recognition for everything I've done, wanting this person to recognize my effort and recognize that I've done some good things and recognize that I've worked hard, rather than being told that I did not. But there was also another meaning that I thought was interesting, and that's I don't need to stand on a stage and have my empathy be noticed or applauded, kind of thing. And I can just know who I am, know what I've done, and continue to keep it to myself, which is what I have done, except for a couple of people over the last many years, and now YouTube. And I've shared it because it's been part of my card reading journey. So I feel like it's important. But it isn't something that I'm standing on a stage and saying, I want everyone to acknowledge me for this. It's more just a part of me. So I think it was validation that when I'm dealing with this person, I need to just keep doing what I'm doing, right? This person is not going to change their opinion that I'm flaunting the fact that I have empathy or that I'm not showing empathy towards them. And so it just needs to be something that is more personal. And I think that's a positive interpretation of this reading as well. So yeah, I don't have to take their criticism to heart, right? I know who I am. So that's it for this update. I really appreciate you guys watching. I hope that you're having a good summer, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye for now.